Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, today I bring you an especially urgent and profound message from our beloved Pope Francis. During a moment of reflection at a recent audience in the Vatican, the Holy Father shared a concern that has been weighing on his pastoral heart: the mistakes many Catholics make during Holy Week without realizing it, transforming this sacred period into something completely different from what it should be. Holy Week is not a time of empty traditions, Pope Francis warned with his characteristic loving firmness, but a time of true spiritual transformation. Have you ever stopped to consider whether you are experiencing this sacred period in the right way? What the Holy Father has to reveal to us could completely change how you experience these holy days. I'll share with you something that few know, but that Pope Francis has emphasized in his most recent homilies. There is a crucial difference between mechanically following rituals and truly experiencing the Paschal mystery. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. The 5 serious mistakes that, according to the Holy Father, may be compromising your spiritual experience during Holy Week. Before revealing the first of these crucial mistakes, let me ask a direct question to your heart. When was the last time you truly felt the presence of Christ during Holy Week celebrations? If you hesitated to answer, don't worry. Pope Francis himself admits that, even as a priest, he too has experienced moments of automatism in his spiritual life. In one of his most intimate reflections, shared during a homily at St. Martha's House, Francis revealed, "Often we transform Holy Week into a series of external obligations, forgetting the essential, the personal encounter with the crucified and risen Christ." This sincere confession from the Holy Father shows us that no one is immune to these mistakes, but also points us toward the path to correction. Today, we're going to dive deeply into Pope Francis's teachings on how to avoid these 5 serious mistakes that may be preventing you from fully experiencing the grace of Holy Week. What the Holy Father will reveal to us isn't just superficial guidance, but true keys to profound spiritual transformation. Join me now in this moment of personal reflection. Close your eyes for a few seconds and think about how you have experienced Holy Week in recent years. Has it been a time of true spiritual connection or just a series of religious commitments? Pope Francis teaches us that this honesty with ourselves is the first step toward true change. And before we reveal the first serious mistake identified by the Holy Father, I want you to know that it's no coincidence you're receiving this message now. As Pope Francis himself always says, God speaks to us through the moments and people he places in our path. If you're here, it's because the time has come to transform your experience of Holy Week. What I'm going to share with you in the upcoming revelations are teachings that Pope Francis has transmitted in special moments, during private audiences, in pastoral conversations, and in his deepest reflections on the meaning of Holy Week. These are guidelines that come directly from the pastoral heart of the Holy Father to your heart. Some of these insights might seem surprising at first glance, but as the Pope himself reminds us, sometimes we need to unlearn in order to learn again. And that's exactly what we'll do together. We'll unlearn some habits that might be damaging our experience of Holy Week, so we can learn to live it in its fullness. If these initial words from Pope Francis have already touched your heart, I invite you to do 3 things right now. Write in the comments, "I am ready to transform my Holy Week." Like this video, so this message reaches more people. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the revelations that will follow. In the next chapter, I'll reveal the first serious mistake that Pope Francis identified. And believe me, it's something that most Catholics do without even realizing it's wrong. It's a revelation that will shake some certainties and open your eyes to a completely new dimension of your faith. Prepare your heart, because what the Holy Father has to teach us goes far beyond what you imagine. As he himself says, true spiritual renewal begins when we have the courage to look at our practices with honesty and openness to change. Stay with us, because in the next chapter, you'll discover something that Pope Francis considers one of the greatest obstacles to an authentic experience of Holy Week. And believe me, it's not what you're thinking. Welcome back, dear brothers and sisters. As promised, today I'll reveal the first of the 5 serious mistakes that Pope Francis identified in our experience of Holy Week. And prepare yourself, because this revelation from the Holy Father may touch a sensitive point in your spiritual life. In a recent homily at St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Francis shared something that left many faithful in deep reflection. The first and most serious mistake we make during Holy Week is turning it into a marathon of obligations, rushing from celebration to celebration, without giving time for the mystery to penetrate our hearts. Kirsty, have you ever caught yourself rushing from one celebration to another during Holy Week, participating in the Stations of the Cross while checking messages on your phone, or perhaps attending the Easter Vigil with your mind on the next day's commitments? If you identified with any of these situations, Pope Francis has a special message for you. Haste, warns the Holy Father, is the great enemy of spiritual experience in our times. In a pastoral conversation that few know about, Francis shared a personal experience that perfectly illustrates this point. He told how, as a priest in Argentina, he realized he was rushing so much during Holy Week celebrations that in the end, he felt more exhausted than renewed. It took a moment of crisis for me to understand that I was doing everything wrong, the Pope confessed. I was so concerned with fulfilling all the rituals that I had forgotten to truly live them. This sincere confession from the Holy Father shows us that even the most dedicated can fall into this trap. But what exactly does Pope Francis mean when he talks about truly living the moments of Holy Week? In his own words, each moment of Holy Week is like a sacred page that needs to be read slowly, deeply meditated upon, and incorporated into our heart. Let me share with you a powerful testimony that Pope Francis himself reported. During a private audience, an elderly lady from Sicily approached him and said, "Holy Father, for the first time in 70 years, I truly felt what Good Friday is. Do you know why? Because I finally stopped worrying about doing everything perfectly and simply allowed myself to be present in the moment." This story deeply touched the Pope's heart, and he frequently uses it to illustrate how our obsession with external perfection can prevent us from experiencing the true inner transformation that Holy Week proposes. Now I'll guide you in a moment of personal reflection. Close your eyes for an instant and think, during recent Holy Weeks, were you truly present at each celebration? Or was your body there, but your mind wandering through 1,000 concerns? Pope Francis teaches us that this self-awareness is the first step toward change. The Holy Father offers 3 practical signs to identify if you're falling into this first serious mistake. You constantly find yourself looking at the clock during celebrations. Your mind is more focused on what comes next than on the present. Moment you feel more relief than renewal at the end of the celebrations. If you identified with any of these signs, don't despair. Pope Francis has a practical solution to help us overcome this mistake. He suggests what he calls the method of 3 sacred moments. Before each Holy Week celebration, reserve 3 sacred moments. A moment of preparation, where you silence your heart. A moment of conscious presence during the celebration, and a moment of gratitude at the end. They're just a few minutes, but they can completely transform your experience. This guidance from the Holy Father isn't just a suggestion, it's a proven path to a deeper experience of Holy Week. As he himself testifies, when I began to practice these 3 moments, I discovered a completely new Holy Week, full of meanings that had previously escaped me. If these words from Pope Francis are touching your heart, I invite you to do something very special now. Write in the comments, "I will practice the 3 sacred moments." This isn't just a comment, it's a public commitment to your spiritual transformation. And get ready, because in the next chapter I'll reveal the second serious mistake identified by Pope Francis, a mistake that, according to him, is even more subtle and dangerous than the first. As he himself warned, the second mistake is so common that many consider it normal, but it's eroding the essence of our faith without us realizing it. Don't miss this next revelation. Turn on notifications, like this video, and share it with those you love. As Pope Francis says, true devotion multiplies when shared with love. And remember, it's not by chance that you're receiving this message now. The Holy Father himself teaches us that God places in our path exactly the words we need to hear at the right time. This could be the Holy Week that will change your life forever. My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, the time has come to reveal the second serious mistake that Pope Francis identified in our experience of Holy Week. And prepare your heart, because this revelation from the Holy Father may profoundly challenge some of our most deeply rooted practices, in a homily that few know about. Delivered during a celebration at St. Martha's House, Pope Francis made a statement that left many in reflective silence. The second most serious mistake we make during Holy Week is transforming our devotion into a shield that separates us from others, forgetting that Christ died to unite, not to divide. Have you ever observed how sometimes we become so focused on our devotional practices during Holy Week that we completely forget about the people around us? Pope Francis calls this the paradox of devotion without compassion, a phenomenon that he has observed with growing concern. I've seen people who don't miss a single Holy Week celebration, shared the Holy Father, but walk right past a beggar at the church door. What kind of devotion is that which makes us forget the face of Christ in our neighbor? This observation from the Pope touches a nerve center of our religious experience. In an especially moving revelation, Francis shared a personal experience from his time as a priest in Argentina. Once I saw a lady who was so concerned with getting a good spot for the procession that she pushed an elderly woman who was in her way. At that moment, I realized something was deeply wrong with our understanding of Holy Week. But what exactly does Pope Francis want to teach us with these observations? According to him, Holy Week is not just a time of personal devotion, but a call to social transformation. Christ didn't die just to save us individually, teaches the Holy Father, but to create a community of love and compassion. Let me share with you a powerful testimony that perfectly illustrates this point. During a general audience, a young Brazilian woman shared with the Pope how her experience of Holy Week completely changed when she began to combine her devotions with volunteer work at a nursing home. "Holy Father," she said, "I discovered that the true meaning of Christ's passion is in service to others." Pope Francis was so touched by this testimony that he frequently cites it as an example of what he calls incarnate devotion, a way of living Holy Week that perfectly unites prayer and social action. Now I'll guide you in a moment of deep personal reflection. Think about the last times you participated in Holy Week celebrations. How many people did you really notice around you? How many stories of pain and hope did you allow yourself to know? Pope Francis teaches us that these questions are essential for an authentic experience of this sacred time. The Holy Father identifies 3 signs that indicate we may be falling into this second serious mistake. When we get irritated by distractions caused by other people during celebrations. When we criticize those who don't follow traditions exactly as we do. When our participation in Holy Week doesn't result in any concrete action of charity. To help overcome this mistake, Pope Francis proposes what he calls the method of integrated devotion. He explains it this way: for each moment of prayer during Holy Week, there should be a corresponding moment of service to our neighbor. For each hour in church, an hour with those who suffer. This guidance from the Holy Father is revolutionary in its simplicity. As he himself explains, it's not about reducing our devotions, but enriching them with the real encounter with Christ in the poor and suffering. Pope Francis shared a special secret about how to implement this method. Start with small gestures. Perhaps it's noticing that person who is always alone at Mass, or visiting a sick neighbor between celebrations. The important thing is to begin. If these words from the Pope are touching your heart, I invite you to do something concrete right. Now write in the comments a specific act of charity that you commit to perform during this Holy Week. As the Holy Father says, the promises we make in public have a special strength. And prepare your heart, because in the next chapter, we'll reveal the third serious mistake identified by Pope Francis, a mistake that, according to him, is silently destroying the faith of many Catholics. As he warned, this third mistake is like a sweet poison that gradually undermines our connection with the true meaning of Christ's passion. Don't miss this next revelation. Turn on notifications, like this video, and share it with those who need this message. As Pope Francis teaches us, true devotion is like a light. The more we share it, the more it shines. And remember, if these words are touching your heart now, it's not by chance. As the Holy Father says, God always finds a way to make his message reach those who are truly open to hearing it. Welcome back, dear brothers and sisters in Christ. The time has come to reveal the third serious mistake that Pope Francis identified in our experience of Holy Week. And this revelation from the Holy Father is particularly impactful because it touches on something many of us do without even realizing it. During a special audience with a group of pilgrims, Pope Francis made a statement that left everyone in deep silence. The third most serious mistake we make during Holy Week is transforming the most sacred moments of our faith into a sequence of mechanical acts, emptied of their profound meaning. Have you ever caught yourself repeating the prayers of the Stations of the Cross without really meditating on each station? Or perhaps participating in Good Friday more out of custom than true devotion? Pope Francis calls this spiritual automatism, a condition that he considers especially dangerous for our faith life. In one of his most intimate reflections, shared during a homily at St. Martha's House, the Holy Father revealed something surprising. Even as Pope, I sometimes catch myself falling into this trap. It takes a conscious effort to keep alive the meaning of each gesture, each word, each sacred moment. This sincere confession from Pope Francis shows us something very important. No one is immune to this mistake, but we can all overcome it with proper guidance. As he himself explains, the problem isn't in the repetition of rituals, but in the absence of heart in that repetition. Let me share with you a powerful testimony that Pope Francis himself often cites. During a pastoral visit, a young mother approached him crying and said, "Holy Father, for 20 years I participated in Holy Week, but yesterday for the first time I truly understood what the foot washing means. Do you know why? Because I finally stopped to think about the meaning of each gesture." This testimony deeply touched the Pope's heart, and he frequently uses it to illustrate how we can spend years performing the same rituals without ever truly penetrating their deeper meaning. Now I invite you to a moment of sincere reflection. When was the last time you really meditated on the meaning of each moment of Holy Week? When was the last time you felt your heart truly touched during the kissing of the cross on Good Friday? Pope Francis teaches us that these questions are essential for our spiritual renewal. The Holy Father identified 3 clear signs that indicate we may be falling into this third serious mistake. When we know all the prayers by heart, but don't remember the last time they really moved us. When we participate in celebrations more, out of obligation than desire. When we finish Holy Week feeling that we've fulfilled our duty, but without experiencing a true inner transformation. To help us overcome this mistake, Pope Francis developed what he calls the method of conscious presence. In his own words, before each Holy Week celebration, we should ask ourselves, what does this specific moment mean in the history of my salvation? How does this liturgical gesture connect with my life today? The Holy Father shared a special technique that he himself uses to keep alive the meaning of each moment. He calls it active contemplation and explains it this way. For each moment of Christ's Passion, we should find a parallel in our own life. When we meditate on the cross, for example, we should ask ourselves, what is my cross today? How am I carrying it? This guidance from Pope Francis is deeply transformative. As he himself testifies, when I began to practice this active contemplation, each moment of Holy Week gained new meaning, new depth. It was no longer just a story I knew by heart, but a living reality in my own life. The Holy Father offers us 3 practical steps to implement this method. Before each celebration, set aside 5 minutes to read and meditate on the day's readings. During each rite, focus on a single gesture or word that most touches your heart. After each celebration, dedicate a few moments to write a brief reflection on how that moment connects with your life. If these words from Pope Francis are touching your heart, I invite you to do something special now. Write in the comments, "I want to live each moment with awareness." This isn't just a comment, it's a commitment to a deeper experience of your faith. And get ready, because in the next chapter, I'll reveal the 4th serious mistake identified by Pope Francis, a mistake that, according to him, is silently undermining the true meaning of Holy Week in our communities. As he warned, This fourth mistake is especially dangerous because it disguises itself as virtue. Don't miss this next revelation. Turn on notifications, like this video, and share it with those who need to awaken to a deeper experience of Holy Week. As Pope Francis says, when we share spiritual knowledge, it doesn't divide, it multiplies. And remember, if these words are resonating in your heart now, it's not a coincidence. As the Holy Father teaches, God always finds a way to awaken our hearts when we are truly willing to listen to His voice. Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, we have reached a crucial moment in our revelations, the fourth serious mistake that Pope Francis identified in our experience of Holy Week is perhaps one of the most subtle, and precisely because of this, one of the most dangerous for our spiritual life. In a revealing audience in St. Peter's Square, Pope Francis made a statement that caused great impact. The fourth mistake that compromises our experience of Holy Week is the obsession with the external perfection of rituals, while we neglect the true inner transformation that Christ desires to work in us. Have you ever caught yourself more concerned with the outfit you'll wear at the Easter Vigil than with the preparation of your heart? Or perhaps you've been more anxious about getting a good photo of the procession than meditating on its meaning. Pope Francis identifies this as one of the great challenges of our time, what he calls the temptation of liturgical perfectionism. In an intimate conversation he had with a group of young priests, the Holy Father shared something surprising. When I was a young priest, I was so concerned with doing everything perfectly according to the rubrics that I forgot to look at people's faces. One day, an elderly lady said to me, "Father John, the Mass was perfect, but where was your heart?" This story, which Pope Francis frequently shares, perfectly illustrates the danger of what he calls liturgy without soul, when we become so focused on the perfect execution of rites that we lose their spiritual essence. Holy Week is not a spectacle to be photographed, warns the Holy Father, but a mystery to be lived. In one of his most impactful homilies, he elaborated, "Sometimes we're so concerned with capturing the perfect moment for our social networks that we forget to let the moment capture us spiritually." Let me share with you a powerful testimony that reached Pope Francis's ears. During a pastoral visit, a liturgy coordinator confessed, "Holy Father, I spent years worrying about every detail of Holy Week celebrations, but this year, when my mother fell ill and I couldn't organize anything, I discovered that God was more present in my imperfection than in all my previous perfection. Now I invite you to a moment of sincere reflection. How many times has your concern with external perfection prevented you from truly experiencing the moment? How many times have you been distracted by details that, in the end, had no real spiritual importance? Pope Francis identified 3 clear signs that indicate we may be falling into this fourth serious mistake, when we become more concerned with appearance than with the essence of celebrations. When we get irritated by small imperfections in rituals, when we spend more time organizing and photographing than praying and meditating. To help us overcome this mistake, the Holy Father proposes what he calls the method of sacred simplicity. In his words, the true beauty of liturgy isn't in the perfection of its execution, but in the sincerity of the hearts that participate in it. Pope Francis shares 3 fundamental principles to implement this method. Before each celebration, say this prayer: "Lord, don't allow me to be distracted by externals and miss the essential." During rituals, focus more on feeling than on doing. After celebrations, ask yourself, what changed in my heart? This guidance from the Holy Father is revolutionary in its simplicity. As he himself testifies, when I began to practice this sacred simplicity, I discovered a depth in liturgy that I had never experienced before. If these words from Pope Francis are touching your heart, I invite you to do something concrete now. Write in the comments, "I choose sacred simplicity." This isn't just a comment, it's a declaration that you're willing to go beyond appearances. And get ready, because in the next and final chapter, I'll reveal the 5th serious mistake identified by Pope Francis, a mistake that, according to him, can compromise all the spiritual fruit of Holy Week. As he warned, this last mistake is the most subtle of all because it hides under the appearance of piety. Don't miss this last and crucial revelation. Turn on notifications, like this video, and share it with those who need this message of simplicity and authenticity. As Pope Francis says, the true beauty of faith is in its simplicity. And remember, if you're receiving this message now, it's not by chance. As the Holy Father teaches, God uses even the most modern means to touch our hearts with His ancient and ever-new truth. My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, we have reached the culminating moment of our revelations. The fifth and final serious mistake that Pope Francis identified in our experience of Holy Week is, according to his own words, the most dangerous of all because it can nullify all the spiritual benefit of this sacred time. In a deeply moving homily at St. Peter's Basilica, the Holy Father made a statement that left everyone in reflective silence. The fifth fatal mistake is thinking that the transformation of Holy Week ends with Easter Sunday. In reality, that's exactly where it should begin. Have you ever felt that sense of mission accomplished when Holy Week ends? That relief that now I can return to normal life? Pope Francis identifies this as one of the greatest obstacles to our true spiritual transformation, what he calls the period syndrome. In an especially touching revelation, shared during a meeting with young people, Pope Francis confessed, "When I was a young priest, I also made this mistake. I lived Holy Week intensely, but on the Monday after Easter, it was as if everything went back to normal. Until one day a wise confessor told me, 'John, you're treating the resurrection as an ending, when in fact it's a beginning.'" This personal experience of the Holy Father helps us understand something fundamental. Holy Week is not a parenthesis in our daily life, but should be the catalyst for a permanent transformation. As he himself explains, Christ's resurrection was not an event that ended 2,000 years ago. It must happen every day in our life. Let me share with you a powerful testimony that Pope Francis frequently cites. A Portuguese lady wrote to him saying, "Holy Father, for years I lived Holy Week as a special time, but then returned to my usual life. This year I understood that each Sunday should be a small Easter, each day a small resurrection. Now I invite you to a moment of deep reflection. How has your life been in the weeks following Easter? Do the fruits of Holy Week remain alive in your heart, or do they fade like the melodies of Easter hymns?" Pope Francis identified 3 clear signs that indicate we may be falling into this fifth serious mistake: when our spiritual intensity decreases dramatically after Easter, when we return to the same habits and attitudes we had before Holy Week, when we treat the graces received as memories and not as seeds to be cultivated. To help us overcome this mistake, the Holy Father developed what he calls the method of continuous Easter. In his words, each moment of our life must be illuminated by the light of the resurrection. We are not called to live one Holy Week per year, but to live all weeks of the year in a holy way. Pope Francis offers us 3 concrete practices to implement this method. Every morning, renew the promises made during Holy Week. Each Sunday, relive a specific aspect of Easter celebrations. Monthly, make a small spiritual retreat to revive the graces received. This guidance from the Holy Father is truly transformative. As he himself testifies, "When I began to live this way, I discovered that Easter is not a moment of the year, but a permanent state of the heart." Pope Francis also shares a special secret for keeping the grace of Holy Week alive. Choose a specific moment of Christ's Passion that most touched your heart and make it your anchor moment, the one you always return to when you need to renew your spiritual fervor. If these words from the Holy Father are touching your heart, I invite you to do something concrete now. Write in the comments, "I want to live in permanent Easter," and share which moment of Holy Week you will choose as your spiritual anchor. Now that we've revealed the 5 serious mistakes identified by Pope Francis, the time has come for a decision. As the Holy Father himself challenges us, it's not enough to know the mistakes, we must have the courage to change them. Let's briefly recap the 5 mistakes we've learned to avoid. The haste that kills faith. Devotion without compassion, spiritual automatism. The illusion of external perfection, the period syndrome. Pope Francis assures us, when we avoid these 5 mistakes, our experience of Holy Week becomes not only deeper but truly transformative. Before concluding, the Holy Father leaves us with a special blessing. May the Lord help you to live not just a holy week, but a holy life, always illuminated by the light of the resurrection. If this video touched your heart, don't keep this message just for yourself. Share it with those you love. Leave your like, turn on notifications, and write in the comments how these revelations from Pope Francis changed your perspective on Holy Week. And always remember the words of the Holy Father. The true Holy Week is not the one we live once a year, but the one that transforms each week of our life into a renewed encounter with the risen Christ.